Hello, class. As we are moving into our final weeks and you are preparing to develop your curriculum, I want to review implementing and evaluation of curriculum in this presentation. It will also be in reference to Discussion Board 2, which focuses on aligning course learning outcomes with evaluation and assessment measures, program goals, and accreditation standards. The objectives moving forward will be to design a program of study that includes content, critical thinking, student-centered learning, and logic. Describe different learning styles and how they apply to curriculum design. Explain the purposes and process for evaluation of curriculum. This is an overview of implementing curriculum as we discussed over the past several weeks, especially concerning internal and external frame factors. So when we look at implementing curriculum, there are several items that are really important. Number one, program maintenance. What that means is essentially what will drive the revenue to keep the program operational. Program development. What courses are needed to develop the program? And this is what you were considering while you were developing your certificate programs. Personnel. Personnel involves who will teach the curriculum, what expertise or level of education is needed. Capital expenditures. This will include offices, classrooms, labs, or any other high-priced items that have a lifespan of greater than 5 years. Services are usually broken up into two areas: institutional supplies and programmatic supplies. The institutional supplies and services may include the internet or Blackboard, which you experience in this particular program. The costs are allocated proportionally to all programs. For program supplies and services, you would consider supplies you would need for field trips, accreditation fees, simulation fees, etc. Implementing curriculum, we need to consider that things often go wrong regardless of how carefully you've planned what you're going to do. When you see this quote from Robert Burns' poem, To a Mouse, best laid plans of mice and men often go astray. However, what can we do to assure that implementing curriculum would move forward without a hitch? First, you want to know who your students are. What knowledge level do they need? What are pre- or co-requisites? This will guide teaching strategies. Next, you will determine how will you evaluate learning and the course. Include the learning experiences that the students will be involved in course learning activities. Next, do you have the necessary resources? If your program includes an online component, do you have the needed use of technology? Simulation equipment, field equipment, whatever else is necessary for your particular program. Guest speakers. Is this something that would be needed for your course? If a guest speaker cancels, do you have a backup plan? We ask, has the actual course been, or program been developed? Meaning that do you have to actually develop course learning objectives, or has the syllabus already been pre-developed for a previous time? And then we consider how it will be facilitated. Will this be a traditional face-to-face, satellite campuses, hybrid course? Is this an online course? Unwritten curriculum. One good example would be 9/11. How horrible was that event? How did it impact your curriculum? Something may be happening in the news that although you have a curriculum developed, new events may really be impactful for the curriculum that you're trying to deliver. So these are all things that happen while actually implementing your curriculum and things that you should consider in development and design moving forward. I believe the most important thing to consider is that your curriculum is fluid and that changes should and could be made even as you are delivering a particular course. We covered educational theory. What you're looking at here is a theory of multiple intelligence. This was developed by Howard Gardner. Excuse me. He identified 7 distinct intelligences, and that was known as the multiple intelligence theory. And as you can see, there's linguistic, logical, mathematical, musical, intrapersonal, interpersonal, bodily, kinesthetic, and spatial. This theory emerged from cognitive research and documented the extent to which students possess different kinds of minds, and therefore they learn, remember, perform, and understand in different ways. According to Gardner, it was first developed in 1991, and we still use it today. Now, depending on your students, using this theory may alter how you interact with the individuals you are teaching. Also, it will depend on the learning strategies you use, considering whether you are teaching face-to-face, online, as we talked a lot about in Module 4. We can address multiple intelligences, but we also have to address how the course will be facilitated and how we can best utilize this theory. Theorists have introduced multiple intelligences. Gardner is the most renowned. Now, in 2013, there was actually an eighth intelligence that was introduced, and that was by FAN, F-A-N. And this intelligence was considered a naturalist. That was added to the list that I had talked about in the previous slide, but we added naturalist to this list. So what does having a naturalist intelligence mean? Example, if you were teaching about medicine, you would have some students who would gravitate toward more natural remedies or a more holistic approach, while other students who have concrete reasoning would be more focused on the calculations of medications on how to treat the disease. One good example was an educational video, whereas a nurse was providing medication to a young girl with cancer. While administering an injectable medication, they actually sang a song together. This was using musical intelligence. By the end of the song, her medication was finished being administered. She experienced much fewer side effects and had documented better outcomes. Evaluation. We start with looking at types of evaluation. Now, there are various models that can be applied and used for program evaluation. However, all evaluation is based on accreditation standards, essentials or ENDRA competencies, criteria for ongoing approval, regardless of the model used. As you can see here, there's different levels of approval. There's program review, program evaluation. There's strategic planning. Now, strategic planning usually involves maintenance of the quality of the graduates and how that is perceived. A good example would be to ensure that the institution maintains NCLEX pass rates at or above the national average. And items would include making sure that this goal was achieved, and they would monitor progress toward how they are achieving this goal. Now, master plans for evaluation include all evaluation that takes place throughout a program, and it indicates who, what, where, and how the program will be evaluated, who the reports will be sent to for review, and how the results will be disseminated. Regardless of what type of evaluation you're using, all evaluation focuses on quality, currency, relevance, projected lifespan of the program, and possible revisions for continuous quality improvement. In course design and development, assessment and evaluation are both used to improve the quality, effectiveness, and affordability of programs and the services. So let's look at evaluation versus assessment. So when we look at assessment, we can say that assessment is in conclusion of how well the program is doing. We're looking at student learning outcomes. So it essentially measures effectiveness. Assessment is a systematic collection, analysis, and interpretation of information related to a particular outcome. This is when we're looking at our CLOs, our course learning outcomes, or objectives. There's multiple levels to assessment. They can be formative, which is ongoing throughout the course, or summative, which is a summation, and it takes place at the end of the course. No matter what type of assessment you're using, it's important to note that assessments are longer term in regard to length, and they are ongoing, and it's a fluid process. Versus evaluation, which equals determination or worth. Essentially, you're evaluating at the end what was the program, what was the value of the program. You're measuring for the purpose of judging. You're looking at intended outcomes versus actual outcomes. So you're looking at research activities and cost effectiveness. What were the outcomes? What was the value to the program? The worth or value to the community, the institution, employees. The policies. What were the value of the policies? Do they need to be improved upon, revised? Community service. Value to the community. Did the program do what it was intended to do? Were the outcomes were what the intended outcomes were as far as community goes? All these elements are taken into account when they consider the program, whether the program will be continued, whether it will be discontinued, whether it needs to be revised, and many more items moving forward. There are also other metrics and benchmarks to consider for program evaluation. We consider SWOT analysis, student learning outcomes, which we've been talking about at length, facilities, cost effectiveness, technology, library, teaching effectiveness, and training needs. Just a few to put out there when considering curriculum design. I use the term formative and summative assessment, and I just want to give some brief overviews, although you do go over formative and summative assessment at length in the evaluation and assessment course. For formative assessment actually provides ongoing information throughout your course on how to best revise or modify your course or program for improvement. Example, you might do pre and post tests, quizzes, discussions, journaling, whatever you feel will give you input on how your students are doing throughout the course, versus summative, which is a summation at the end of the course. Summative can also be considered an evaluation. So it's the assessment at the end of an operating cycle used to inform program adoption, modification, or renewal. Summative assessments inform long-term program goals, whether we are meeting those goals, and summative assessments are also used for accreditation. Examples of summative assessments would be final exams, NCLEX pass rates, student portfolios, capstone projects. They look at the end results of, as I mentioned, summation. And when considering these end results, they will evaluate areas within the curriculum that are weak and possibly need to be strengthened or improved upon. So in closing, it's necessary to understand when evaluating curriculum that the role and responsibility of an educator is to continually evaluate the curriculum. Formative and summative evaluation will be important. Different perspectives are helpful. When you're looking at assessing your curriculum, you must decide to yourself what went well, what didn't go well, why didn't it go well, what should I update or change the next time I teach that course. Considering the wonderful research that you will share during Module 4, continuous quality improvement was huge, and course improvement and course revision was, in many instances, based on student feedback and teacher reflection, and it's important for you to consider that in curriculum design and development. And one of the most important items to consider is what you're teaching in what venue, because face-to-face is a whole lot different than an online forum. So when we look at all these elements, I just want you to keep in mind how you're delivering your course, who you're delivering it to, and what are the best methods to have optimal student learning outcomes. I hope you found this presentation helpful as we are wrapping up the necessary components for curriculum development. Weeks that follow, I'm looking forward to reading your drafts and your final projects. And as always, I'm available for discussion. Thank you. Have a great day.